LA bloggers and food critics in order to ask her some questions about her plant-based journey, and especially here in LA. So can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I eat meat. Hopefully that's like, I'm allowed to be on this.
Yes, it's your journey. So
this is my journey.
Yeah.
I'm a lapsed vegan. I feel so guilty every time I eat meat. So hopefully that counts for something.
Sure.
But yeah, I've been like vegetarian since I was like in 6th grade, and basically just like flirted with that like throughout my whole life. And then I saw Earthlings. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's like this documentary about like animal rights, which sounds, that word doesn't even have meaning anymore, but it's so powerful. It's about humans' relationship to animals and entertainment and food, like circuses, clothing. And anyway, so I saw that, and the movie is called The Vegan Maker because it has such a high incidence of making people turn vegan. So I saw that movie in college, saw that documentary, and I became vegan. And I maintained that for a couple years. I was like one of those really like angry, righteous vegans that nobody wants to be around. And it was like really lonely, and I felt a lot better in my body, but it was super lonely. And then I binged off the deep end and ate lots of fried chicken. So that's my journey.
Really
that's my journey. I'm here, I'm figuring it out. Sometimes I eat seitan, sometimes I eat In-N-Out. So
we all have a different journey, and I'm still figuring out mine. I mean, I'm not opposed to eating meat myself. I just wanted to develop a deeper appreciation for vegetables and eat a little healthier, a little cleaner. It's not about, I care about animals, but I also think they taste good. And everyone's path is different. So I'm here on Taco Tuesday to try like vegan tacos. What are your favorite vegan tacos, and what would you recommend we try before we leave LA?
okay, well, so I think if I had to recommend one vegan taco, I'd say you found it. We're gonna try it. It's Cena Vegan, which started out as a taco stand. They're not even a truck. It's a roadside stand, and it's of the style that you'll find in LA and Mexico City. And when I say of the style, I mean it's a roadside stand, not a truck.
Right.
Obviously, the salsas and the cheese sauce are not transpositions of the food in Mexico City.
Right.
The flavors are slightly different. But the fact that this is a Latina-owned taco truck, I think really informs the cuisine. And so when I was interviewing the owners, they talked about how like in their vegan journey, you find all these vegan meats, and there's no shortage of vegan meats, I'm happy to say. We've progressed beyond field roast, Boca burgers, which bless their hearts, in the 90s, at least Boca burger, and Tofurkey, they paved the way for things like Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat and all of that great stuff. But so the point is, we have a lot of options, but what they were saying, which resonated with me as a former vegan and someone who eats 80-90% vegan, is that it is difficult to find culturally informed vegan foods sometimes. Obviously, if you are looking for Mexican, Guatemalan foods that are plant-based, of course, there's rice, beans, there's all this type of stuff. But if you want the mouthfeel of meat, it is very difficult to find stuff that is well spiced, well marinated. Like the complexity of an al pastor, a spit roasted al pastor on the trompo, that's hard. And so what I feel that Cena Vegan does really well is the flavor profile and the mouthfeel of meat. And so sometimes they use seitan, which is obviously wheat gluten. It's not gluten-free, sorry celiacs. And it's hard for me to eat gluten, so I empathize with that. But they also have, they use tofu skin, which is gluten-free, and it has a really nice texture. It's not tofu, okay? It's tofu skin. It's more dense. It has more of a bite. So all of that is to say, I'm a huge fan of Cena Vegan. That said, there's also Gracias Madre, Sage, which, they're fine. They're probably less, I'm not gonna say less flavorful, but if you're looking for something really bold, that's not it. It's in its own camp, which is fine.
I think there's a misconception in many communities of color, disenfranchised communities, etc., that vegan 100% translates to bland, like just like boiled vegetables. I know that was something that kind of kept me from going down this path in the past. Since I am not opposed to eating meat, I think it's really tasty. I know a lot of people hate hearing that. I'm not against it. I'm just choosing to not eat it for different reasons. But I miss some things. I miss being able to eat certain meals that I know tasted really good. And some of the replacement options taste and feel a little foreign. So something I'm really interested in is trying all of the foods out here at Highland Park tonight, and really getting an opportunity to taste really tasty food. I'm really excited. What about Highland Park makes this event so well received?
Totally. So Highland Park and the east side of Los Angeles, like Boyle Heights, Echo Park, have historically been strongholds of Latin and Hispanic communities. And I think that takes on greater importance when you are having, something which is vegan, and the plant-based movement, like you brought up, I'm so glad you made that point, has not always been super friendly or accessible, financially accessible. Let's talk about Whole Foods, whole paycheck.
Yeah,
what?
Exactly.
To communities of color. You walk into a Whole Foods or Lassen's, which is like a local grocery store here, and even in Echo Park, which, like I just told you, has historically been, a Hispanic neighborhood. You walk into Lassen's and that changes. You don't see necessarily a lot of people of color. And I don't want to make this a racial thing. I think that healthy food and a plant-based diet does not have to adhere to that. But I guess what I'm saying is, as a person of color, I'm conscious of that. And so bringing that back to Highland Park and Echo Park, I think that when you look at the clientele of Cena Vegan, it is really diverse, and that's reflected in the ownership. And I think that kind of POC owned vegan businesses, they do exist. And
women owned.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, yeah. And a great place is called Jackfruit Cafe, and Angela Means, who played Felicia on Friday, I think next Friday. She owns an amazing vegan place, like in the middle of the city, and she's like just so humble, and she like walked the runway for like Jean Paul Gaultier, and now she's like cooking up, like she's like behind there in a donut shop. She has half a kitchen in a donut shop, just like,
wow.
I mean, she's just amazing. And that's just one example. There's so many. And so I guess all of that is to say there's so many POC and like women-owned vegan businesses that are making it easier for communities of color, ourselves included, to eat at them. So yeah, and it's not just about the spice of the food. It's not just like, okay, like I am Indian, so I want Indian vegan. No, it's not about that. It's about the feel, the acceptance. How do you feel when you go into a place? Do you feel comfortable? And I think it's that X factor that's important. Oh, I already salsa'd my taco. Was I?
That's okay.
Too quick? Okay.
I'll salsa mine too, so they match.
Cool. Oh, and they make their own tortillas, which I'm sure you know, which is respect.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially important. Like, obviously that elevates any taco, but I think especially for vegetarian tacos where you're so focused on the texture.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have fillings that are lighter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even the best vegetarian meat is not going to have the richness of animal flesh.
Right.
Or it's redundant. But so to have a tortilla with extra body, that's like huge.
There you go.
Cheers. Oh yeah, baby.
It's really good.
Holy shit, I know. What do you think of the meat?
It's really tasty. Maybe a little chewy, but really good. I'll give you a minute. I'm gonna be right there with you in a second.
Okay, good. Yep. Favorite vegan taco in all of LA? not that jackfruit is bad, but if you want as close as possible to the real thing, and by the real thing I mean a street taco. Obviously these are bigger street tacos. Obviously cheese sauce, you're not going to find that on a Mexico City street taco, but yeah, this is as close as you'll come. You're very judicious with the cheese. I went like
Really good.
yeah.
And it's cashew based.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's not too nutty, right? Like sometimes cheese sauces are so not even rich, they're just so nutty.
Yeah.
But this is just, it's like between a cheese sauce and a crema. It effectively feels like crema because it doesn't taste super nutritional yeasty.
Yeah.
You know?
This is really good. I have like literally no idea what any of that means. I just know it's tasty. I approve.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, this is good. See, and this is the kind of thing that I think a lot of people would be surprised to know. A lot of people who are closed off to the idea of like vegan food would be surprised that there are street tacos and that there's cheese sauce and that it's good, you know?
Well, and I think, to be fair, like it's almost harder to eat meat and, have a lot of vegan cuisine as well, because when you eat meat, I really think your taste buds change. I mean, I'm not a scientist, like I don't know, don't quote me, but like when I eat meat, vegan cuisine, I'm not able to appreciate the flavor subtleties of like vegetables in the same way, because like, you know, you pair bacon with lettuce, like
There's no comparison.
there's no comparison. It's just like flavor bomb. But like I remember, man, when I was vegan and I was like, at one point I was like mostly raw.
Oh,
I
wow.
would taste, did not last all that long, but I felt amazing. And it didn't last because of me. I don't think it wasn't a sustainable diet. You know, I think I made certain mistakes, but yeah, lettuce was like sweet. I'd like bite into a tomato. It would be like super sweet. I'm not saying it was like candy, like it was like dessert, like.
But you notice it in a different way.
Flavors were so different.
And that's kind of what my goal was in this this journey. I didn't feel like I was appreciating vegetables. I wasn't eating enough of them, for sure. And I didn't feel like I was appreciating what I was eating. And I was eating too much meat. I got to a point where I was like literally eating like too much, especially bad quality meat that came from I don't even know where. I couldn't control like what was in it. So I thought, well, why didn't I scale it back and just focus on having a more nutritious diet that has more vegetables. I mean, almost all vegetables really. And develop that a more refined flavor palette for these items. Hey guys, I want to tell you to check out my newest video on my review channel, Pursuit of Brilliance. I post new videos once a week on Saturdays. We do a lot of cool things, which I can't wait to share with you. So be sure to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications, and pop on over to Pursuit of Brilliance. Catch you on the flip side. Why do you think LA works so well for kind of this like vegan playing ground where you can experiment and unpack these ideas and grow them into full-fledged events that are bringing people from outside of the communities into the community in order to try these magnificent things? Why is LA like the perfect breeding ground for that, if you will?
Oh my God, I'm so excited to answer this question because the city of LA, if you're listening to this video, you should pay me to be your ambassador because I love LA so much. So let me just back up a moment and talk about LA as a food scene in general. I think that California cuisine, starting with Alice Waters, Wolfgang Puck, they did things that started what are now trends. Like Wolfgang Puck, he put goat cheese on a pizza. In the 80s, you didn't have farmers markets. Like goat cheese wasn't like this normal thing that you found at King Soopers or you know, Kroger or whatever. It was like this super, you know, it was kind of fringe. And so goat cheese and salmon on a pizza, that was like, whew, that's like California cuisine, you know? And, you know, same thing with Alice Waters in Berkeley, super like vegetable forward, which now that doesn't even mean anything. You're like, okay, you know, lots of vegetables. What does that mean? But it doesn't mean anything because they started the trend. And so I think California and Los Angeles specifically has always been a kind of place for dreamers, actors, people to come here and do whatever they want. There's really no rules. And you see that now in chefs like Jessica Kozlow at Squirrel, you know, things like, I don't know, like puffed rice bowls with dill and egg. It's like post-cultural cuisine. You know, it's not Mediterranean, it's whatever. You see that with Travis Lett, all these people. So that's not the vegan stuff. Now moving on to the vegan stuff, man, LA has always been one of the bastions, one of the centers of the plant-based movement in the United States. Others include Boulder, Colorado, which especially for brands is a huge incubator. Silk soy milk started there. You know, people making tofu, celestial seasonings, herbal tea. That was crazy in the 60s. That was like hippie shit. So Colorado, Boulder was one, Portland has been another, Massachusetts, Boston has been another, but LA, especially in the 60s, you know, with kind of like the Hare Krishna movement, the wellness movement was really kind of allied with Eastern spirituality. And that's how it got its start. And there's an amazing restaurant, which I've also written about, called Follow Your Heart. And if you guys know the brand Vegenaise, it's like vegan mayonnaise, and I always said veganese, but it's Vegenaise. And they started in the mid 70s, and they still have a restaurant. It's in the Valley. I don't know if you guys can go, but they have a restaurant. They've been running it for, I don't know, since the 70s. So what is that, like almost like 4 decades, a long, long time. I should know the number because I wrote an article, but I mean, so this is just the bastion of the plant-based movement. And so, I guess to answer your question, why is this the perfect place? You take all that and you take the fact that it has been dominated by, it has not necessarily been racially diverse. And that's not their fault, right? Like if you look at the owners of Follow Your Heart, they are the nicest men you will ever meet. The people that had socioeconomic and cultural access in the 70s happened to be white males, right? But now when we're thinking about communities of color who are looking to get in the movement, that's where places like Cena Vegan come in. And I think LA has obviously always been very diverse. Like it has the biggest community of like Oaxacans, people of Oaxacan origin outside of Oaxaca, largest community of Mexicans, I believe, people of Mexican origin who are also American citizens outside of Mexico, or Mexico City, I think. Biggest population of people of Mexican origin outside of Mexico City in one place. So that is all to say it's really diverse, and you have more and more communities of color doing exactly what we're doing. And I will say that I was talking to somebody who worked at a very large plant-based meat company that I will not name, but he did R&D for them, and he did focus groups for them. And what he told me, which obviously I'm not naming a source, so take it with a grain of salt, but you know what he told me is that Latinos are the fastest growing demographic of consumers of plant-based products. I think that's of plant-based packaged goods, consumer packaged goods. So this is not a packaged good, right? But and that is so exciting, you know? So I think that says a lot. Like it would be really easy to be like, oh, well, of course we found this one truck that happens to be selling vegan tacos, like great, but this is not a one-off thing. So that's really exciting to me.
That's really great. I feel like I'm learning so much, you know, this now embarking on this journey, and it's been really great kind of like talking to you about some of these things, and I'm really excited to learn more as I kind of walk this path. So I wanted to ask you some questions about your path, and you write about the foods you eat, and obviously you know a lot about food culture in LA. What inspired you to get into food blogging and pursuing like food critic ventures?
Totally. Well, so I think there's a lot of terms in the food world which all kind of get lumped together. So there's food blogging, where you have an outlet and you write for yourself. You don't submit it to an editor. It's your own publication. And then there's journalism, right, where you write for a publication and you send it to an editor and you get compensated by them. It's kind of an external relationship. And then there's being an influencer, where you're like, on Instagram or social media or something. And then there's being a critic, where you get to dine at places anonymously. You get to write whatever the hell you want. You can be as nasty as you want, although people like Jonathan Gold are very nice. And you can't accept comps if you're a critic, in theory, right? So what I am, where I fall into that, is I'm a journalist. So I write for different outlets. I used to write for LA Weekly before it went down the drain. LA Weekly sucks now, by the way. We're trying to save the paper. It used to be amazing. And I write for Food and Wine. Okay. And so I got into food writing because I did The Artist's Way. Which is like an amazing book. It's about getting in touch with your creativity. I'd always love food. I'd always watch the Food Network, which whatever, everyone does. But my parents would ask me if I wanted to be a chef, and they'd obviously hope the answer was no, because they were like, well, you're gonna be a doctor. So that did not happen, but I kind of forgot about that, and I majored in literature, and I was floundering in my 20s. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. And I picked up The Artist's Way, did this book. It's like a workbook. And I came to food writing. I never would have thought in a million years, but I love it.
Do you decide what you're going to write about?
Sometimes my editor will be like, this is an important event to cover. Will you write about this? Like the James Beard Awards were last night. And I wasn't there in Chicago, but it was an important event. So she's like, will you write a recap about this? So things like that. But also sometimes I see something like the article about Saint a Vegan. I pitched that because this was not a year ago, but I found out about them, and this was kind of a little more hush through the pipeline at that point, and so I brought that to my editor. So it really does go both ways. And the higher you are, the longer you've been doing this, the more credibility you have as a journalist, the more you can bring stories to the table. And the more you'll get assigned. Okay. So, yeah.
When you go out to dine at an establishment or try a cuisine, what do you look for? What are you personally judging the meal by or the restaurant by? What are your, I don't know if there's industry standards for what you would choose to judge by, or if you've kind of developed your own kind of thing. And so
that is a really good question. Not a lot of people talk about it. So I will just reiterate, I'm not a critic, so I don't rate stuff. And what that means is I don't have a rating at the bottom of my articles. Even if I do have negative things that I think in my head, I'm not necessarily really, I'm not focusing on those in the same way a critic would do, because a critic is trying to give you kind of the most uncensored standpoint, a viewpoint of the restaurant. That said, I think the journalists still face those same obstacles, and food journalism, with travel journalism, it's not like investigative journalism in that you are totally top secret going in there by yourself. Oftentimes you're working with a public relations person, they're telling you information, they might invite you to the opening. So there's kind of a relationship there. And I think that it is, I think about that a lot as a journalist. How do you keep your ethical standards and not just, write about a place that either isn't that great, or now with the Me Too movement, write about chefs who are rapists, basically. It's difficult. And I think about that all the time. But in terms of actually talking about the food, at the end of the day, I think that any press is good press. And so I try to be mindful about the places that I choose to write about in the first place. And secondly, I think that there's so much amazing food in Los Angeles, there's really no place for mediocre food, So it's even if it's $4, like I don't want to spend my $4 on a mediocre place.
Right.
So I guess I have this very subjective standard of like, would I want to spend my money there? Which again, that's very subjective. I've heard other critics say that they really judge a restaurant by what it is trying to be versus this absolute standard of perfection, right? So if I go to the, I don't know, the Chinese American diner around my corner, I'm not judging it to the same standard of, you know, Dave Chang's Momofuku or Major Domo, where you pay, I don't know, almost $100 for Hainanese chicken, you know, so it's not quite the same. But at the end of the day, I try to think about, would I want to spend my money here? You know, because, and this is the last thing I'll say, but as a journalist, if you're not a critic, you know, you do get freebies. That's a fact of the system. And same thing with influencers, which I'm not, but it would be easy to be seduced by that. And I think that as journalists, we have an obligation to kind of uphold that integrity. And I'm fortunate to know many people who do that well.
So since you've been dining in and around LA, what are some of your favorites? So we found out that the best vegan taco, at least in your opinion, is what we're munching on right now. But what are some other things you've experienced, witnessed, etc. In LA that you would recommend for people who are seeking plant-based meals?
Amazing question. I think that my favorite veggie burger I've possibly ever had, and I hate to say like superlatives like that because then people are gonna like want it to be just like so crazy, like knock your socks off, and we're in this age of just like over the top food, like 1,000,000 pounds of cheese and like sparkles and shit. Like this veggie burger is not like that. It's just a really good veggie burger. And it is at, oh my gosh, it's at Plant Powered Kitchen or Power Plant Kitchen. It's one of the two. It's like, I think it's like Power Plant Superfood Cafe. And it's on Pico Boulevard, kind of near Mid-City, West Hollywood. But like if you Google that, like this will come up. So there's not a bunch of places called like this. But what I love about their veggie burger is it's not like Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat where it's like it is really trying to replicate meat. You know, so what those companies do is they strip like the protein in rice or the protein in peas and just create something that you could not make in your kitchen.
Right.
You know, or it would be very difficult to do that. But this is just, it's a mix of like, I think like there's brown rice, there might be some lentils, but it's not mushy. You know how some veggie burgers are just mushy? It's like taking a bite of just like beans or like lentils. You're like it's fine, but this just, it has a really great bite. It has a really great tooth. It's not trying to be meat. It will never fool you, you know, as being meat, and it's not trying to, but it's the most satisfying veggie burger experience I might have had in my whole life. It's very good.
Last question is, what's next for you, you know, in your personal or professional endeavors as related to your plant-based journey? And even if it's not, even if that is potentially rolling it back more, just, you know, where is the future going to take you? Where do you see that?
Well, that's actually a really good question that I've been thinking about a lot. Because as a food journalist, even if you're not a critic, you have an obligation to basically eat everything. You know, it's not just like, oh, you eat the al pastor at one place to describe that one place. You need to know what is going on in the city of Los Angeles. You need to, you know the 10 or 15 other places which are benchmarks for al pastor. Or, you know, I'm being very simplistic here, but the point is that it's not as simple as just going out to eat once or twice a week. You really need to be in the know, and a lot of that is dining at these restaurants. And so I'm gonna be honest, I've struggled with that a lot because I used to be 100% vegan. My partner at the time was also vegan. I was gluten-free. I mean, I was very healthy. I like ran a marathon. I was like at the epitome of my health, but I wasn't doing what I'm doing now. And I love food. I love writing about food. I don't want to give it up, but I often think about if I do feel my best eating mostly vegan. And when I say mostly vegan, I mean like vegan all the time with like an In-N-Out like once every month or something. How can I continue to do what I love to do? Which is be a food writer.
Right.
And I don't have the answer to that. And so I'm navigating that right now. Like I've gotten back into like running, training for a half marathon, and I don't eat the same way that I used to a couple months ago. I'm not on a diet, but I'm not eating out as much as I used to, and that's like work, which sounds, I'm sure people like, oh my God, like shut the fuck up, like you're like, but it's like anything,
right?
You know? So to answer your question, I don't have an answer. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to be mindful, and I know that there are food writers who focus more on like agriculture or I don't know, like socioeconomic sides of things. I don't know. I like writing about restaurants and just taking it one day at a time as it comes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
I
you
really
so
enjoyed speaking
much.
with you. I really felt like I learned a lot, and it was just really interesting. And this was like really amazing.
Yay.
And if you don't mind, I'm gonna grab this last taco.
You should do it. Let me get my taco out of the way.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and cheers.
Cheers.
And here's to happy munching.
Yes. I can grab my taco too. Good?
I don't know what's in it, but it's still good.
Which one do you like better?
Maybe the first one. It's hard to say. This one's really good too.
They do such a good job. And they actually
It's really tasty.
so good, right? And spice. They want to expand to consumer packaged goods and grocery stores, and
They need to.
I will throw a fucking party.
So good. All right. Thanks.
You're a natural.
Yay, we recorded some shit.